Hi folks, with Tassless today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk a bit about administrative legal procedures, and I know something about this more from a perspective of commercial contract law than other areas, but nonetheless, there's a lot of similarities. It's a document filing based legal system where you file your documents, and whether that's done paper or electronically, or starts with paper and ends up electronic, doesn't really matter. It's filing of documents and words and arguments, allegations, evidence, all that sort of thing. All that has to be filed. So if you like, in the vernacular, it's a paper based court, which means it's procedural. There are times for filing, ways of filing, legal ways of filing documents, and so on. So I just want to talk about these procedures and how in a lawfare, they're used very much to, especially in ideological courts, which, they're using ideology to go after Trump. They confer upon them, in ideological courts, they confer upon themselves massive discretion as to what they do, because they're pursuing an ideological goal, orange man bad. Therefore, anything we do is acceptable and justifiable because orange man bad. It could be the same saying in the divorce courts of straight white male or men bad, oppressing women. So whatever we do is justified in pursuit of fighting the oppressor. And it's wherever you see ideology in the law, then you see one side conferring upon them. So, well, we're not restrained by the rules. The rules apply to them, but not to us, because we're fighting back against oppression. So we're allowed to make up the rules as we go along and break the rules and invent rules and so on. So you see that in any ideological court, and you're seeing this with Trump. So it's not just a case of activist DA or activist prosecutor, colluding with the deep state and the Democrat party machines and this sort of thing, as we can see with, say, Fani Willis in Georgia. But it's not just a case of collusion and evidence being the FBI going around dragging up whatever they can find and then handing it to a Letitia James or a Fani Willis to use, which is, by the way, illegal. Particularly given you have to declare it, and once you declare it, then it ceases to be a case about pursuing justice, but clearly a lawfare, an act of lawfare, which this, by the way, all the cases against Trump clearly are. But again, I want to talk about the procedural angle of this. Now, say in the New York case, where you've got an activist judge, and somehow a jury and all the people are impaneled and all the officials are all super anti-Trump. I don't know how it's possible. I mean, how did Trump's lawyers allow that? No, anyway, so they're all anti. A verdict gets done. The judge then makes this is a fraud case where there's nobody who's been defrauded. Now, for a case of fraud, as the court is arguing, somebody has to be defrauded. But in this case, nobody was defrauded. So it's a very unusual case, very unusual. In fact, I don't think a case exists in precedent anywhere in the United States that has this outcome, this judicial outcome based on this sort of case, this sort of evidence. So it's quite astonishing that it happened in the first place. Nonetheless, again, we've got this, we're allowed to do this. Orange man bad, anything we do is thus permissible, no matter what laws we break, no matter what precedents we come up with. So activist prosecutor, activist judge, I mean, that's insane, that judge. How anyway, but the Trump legal team, for obvious reasons, and they'll win this ultimately on appeal. I mean, it's not going to stand. But the Trump team wants to appeal it and go to the local appeals court. And but due to the procedural nature of these things, they can't lodge an appeal until the court lodges its documents of judgment, or preliminary documents, at least in that regard. So the Trump legal team has to wait until that's done. Those guys drag their feet, but Trump's required to pay, I think it was $100,000 a day or something in interest on the amount. And the longer this goes on, the more technically, again, I don't think they'll be able to do it legally, but technically, the more they can use that, this Letitia James, this low IQ deep state activist who's going after Trump, the more the district attorney's office or the prosecutor's office can say, well, we're going to confiscate property because Trump hasn't paid. But the Trump team's trying to lodge an appeal, and the part of the appeal would be a stay in the payment and thus the interest until the matter's heard in appeal, which is perfectly legitimate. When people appeal, I think there's nothing wrong with that. But they don't want that. That's not the outcome they want. So the Trump team goes to, this is my understanding of things, but the Trump team goes to the appeals court. The appeals court grants that Trump can continue, or his business can continue operating, and or his association with it can continue, and but the amount of money has to be paid, the accrual of interest, all that other stuff. There's no stay on that. But it was only part of the court that heard the appeal. Now, just look at this procedure. Why didn't the whole court hear it? So only part of the court, or one judge, heard it. Now, so the Trump team wants to appeal that preliminary decision, which means it has to wait for the whole court. Now, the whole court keeps them, the appeal court, if the entire court keeps them waiting, then again, we've got this interest adding up, and the trigger is then provided for the corrupt district attorney in New York to then, given that the costs are accruing because Trump can't get an appeal done. So they're delayed. I think they're deliberately frustrating and delaying the appeal, so that the trigger will be there for Letitia James to say, well, he hasn't paid, so I'm taking assets to the value of whatever. So now this is a common tactic in ideological courts, and given I've lost so many high quality, people like computer programmers to dramas through the divorce courts, then I've got some knowledge of this also. Now, just before I go to that, certainly in commercial law and business, which is there's no politics involved in these commercial contract things. You can go to a court and ask for, look, well, we need time to do this, or we need so and so, and if it's a reasonable, provided it's not a ridiculous request, we need 1 million years to do it. Then the court grants it. The idea is that procedural fairness must be there. There must be no ambiguity about this. Procedural fairness must be there, must seem to be there. So certainly in fact-based courts, evidence-based courts, then procedural fairness is considered to be very important and something to be upheld. Now, in ideological courts, it's not, because they're pursuing an ideological outcome rather than a fact or evidence-based outcome. So, so you don't see that sort of, you don't see these sort of shenanigans in fact-based courts. Now, in terms of the divorce courts, again, ideological, there were all sorts of tricks used but only against men. They weren't used against the women or the black people. They were used only against men, and particularly white men and white middle-class men. So. And I'll give some examples of that. So a woman files a document somewhere that says, well, I've got a child here that may be, whatever, 1 year old, 10 years old, whatever. And I say, it's just a statement. There's no evidence. I say Billy Bob's the father. Now, what evidence do you have of that? Well, I don't have anything. It's just that's what I reckon. Now, there are some procedures that they go through for that. Well, okay, they'll talk to the woman and say, well, you say you were in such and such a place at the time. There are 10 guys called Billy Bob in that area that are around that age group that you say, and 5 of them are unemployed with no income. 3 of them have got really low paid jobs. And 2 of them have got high paid jobs. This guy's never been out of work and he's got a good job. He's wow, we could get a lot of money out of him. Do you want to say that he's the one? Yeah. You can get thousands of dollars every month if he's the one. Yeah, fuck, he's the one, definitely. So, okay, so we'll sign this form here. We'll write it up for you. Don't worry about it. We'll write it up for you. And you just sign, and that's it. So Billy Bob's it. So they've made the decision based on who's got the highest income and the most stable income. They haven't made the decision. So they've made this decision ideologically. This is the guy you can get the most money out of. Let's say it's him. So that's it. Now what they do then, and this is the procedural unfairness that goes on. What they do then, do they make a concerted attempt to contact Bill? Do they want to establish Billy Bob is the guy? Well, they don't really. They're after Billy Bob's money, not whether he is or isn't. And they've got this attitude: if he isn't the guy, well, he's on a good income, so he should be interested in social fatherhood. Social fatherhood. So he should be. Why shouldn't he give his money? You know, he's got white privilege. He's got a high income. Why shouldn't he give his money to this woman? Even though he may never have met her, have nothing to do with it, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, and if he's not interested in social fatherhood, donating his money to this woman, then he's a fucking Nazi anyway, and we should go after him. So there's a lot of ideology goes into this. So they claim they sent out a letter to Billy Bob. Now, Billy Bob's got 30 days to come back and either deny it or provide evidence. And the evidence bar he has to meet is very high. He's pretty much got to prove that he wasn't in the country, 3 months before and 3 months after conception. And if he's not absolutely ironclad, very high barriers, ironclad evidence that it could not have been him, then they're still going to drag him into court. And that's but the triggering mechanism isn't legal. The woman says, well, I say it's Billy Bob, and she's been put up to it by like the legal aid officers in the welfare department. And so they send out a letter to Billy Bob. Now, they can use any address. They can use an address that he lived at 10 years ago, 100, a million years ago. It doesn't matter. All they have to do is tick the box to say that they sent out a letter. That's it. The letter could have gone to the fucking moon. It doesn't matter. They say they've sent out the letter. So 30 days go by, then administratively, it's all computerized, that automatically triggers collection action against Billy Bob. So they go after Billy Bob now for the child support or the alimony or both or whatever it might be, back payments. And once they send that letter out, or once 30 days after they send the letter, that then triggers fines, administrative costs, collection action. They now have the legal right to go and sweep Billy Bob's bank accounts. They can just go to his, and they can do you have someone named Billy Bob? They can put a circular out to all the banks, somebody named Billy Bob living in Shitsville, and the bank, yep, we've got 10 Billy Bobs here. Okay, and then the banks are giving out private information about Billy Bob, how much money he's got, how long he's been a customer, a whole range of stuff that is now being just handed over. No legal system has been, no impartial court or judge has heard this. So this is all procedural, and this is the procedural unfairness. So Billy Bob goes to get money out of his bank account and finds there's nothing there. And you go, fuck, what happened here? Now, the bank isn't obligated to tell Billy Bob what's happened. So there's a special department that say it can take him days to find out what's going on. He's like, well, fuck, what's happened to my money? Days to find out. Meanwhile, payments that he's supposed to make, maybe it's mortgage payments or, I don't know, payments on his car or something like that. He can't make those payments because all the money's been taken out of his bank account. Then his paycheck comes in from the company and it's minus a few $1,000. He goes, what? Because they've garnished his pay. So he hurriedly, desperately goes into court. He might have to wait weeks to go into court. They'll deal with the woman and give, all she has to do is make an allegation, unproven, no evidence to support, and already the whole machinery kicks into gear. If he wants to do something about that, he has to go full on. It has to be a full court hearing with the judge. For her, it's ticking a box on a form. With him, he has to, lawyers, he has to go filing affidavits and all sorts of things. He has to go to a lot of work to stop this. So he goes along and said, look, I wasn't even in there. I have no idea who this woman is. I wasn't there at the time. Don't care, says the court. So he's in an activist court. And the court will then say, okay, well, Billy Bob says, look, I want a DNA test. I have no idea who this woman is. And I was never in that city at the time. Don't care. You have to pay. But we'll let you appeal. No one's stopping you appealing. But we're only going to let you do a DNA test if this woman agrees. if the woman doesn't agree to the DNA test, then you can't do one. So Billy Bob said, "What's the only way of disproving that I'm like, too bad." So now he has to then launch a separate legal action in order to get legal permission to do a DNA test. That will take quite a while. But so, well, look, if you want to appeal it, that's fine. So if you want to produce your evidence, yeah, good, okay. That you claim you're not the biological father, that's fine. Join a waiting list of between 2 and 3 years before you can bring your case. So procedurally, hugely unfair. This man's been wiped out financially, yet he can't get them out of hurt straight away. And if he does, when they do let him appeal it, then he has to meet a massively high bar of evidence. Whereas again, she only need make an allegation. So this is the example of procedural unfairness that goes on. And it's this sort of thing that they're using. I think they're using Trump. They're using the procedure. They'll just delay his ability to make appeals, but say, well, you have to pay. So this Billy Bob guy has to pay alimony and fines and child support. He has to pay all that, even though he's lodged an appeal, because the appeal is going to take a couple of years. It may take longer, 2.5 years, 3 years. Now, let's say Billy Bob wins the case and he's paid all that money. They don't have to pay it back to him. Billy Bob's lost that money. It's gone. Now they say, well, you launch a civil case. You can take a civil case against the woman, but then legal advice she gets is you better spend this money quickly. Otherwise, you'll have to give it back to him. Holy fuck. So then a mad flurry, and you can't take the assets that she has, like, if she spent the money on clothes or something like that, then you can't take that. So unless she's got the raw cash just sitting there in the bank, then you can't get that. So Billy Bob's lost that money. So 2 to 3 years plus the sweeping of the bank accounts, his life's torn to pieces. There's nothing he can do about it. Procedurally, he's fucked. And all these procedures and these devices they use to delay his appealing of it. So it takes him years to be able to launch an appeal or make an appeal. And they just don't want to hear it. They want his money. They want to bring him down. They want to bring him low. He's a fucking straight white male Nazi. He deserves to be brought low. And so they confer upon themselves these arbitrary powers that are procedurally and grossly unfair by any measure. And this is, again, an ideological court thing. And I think this is part of what they're doing. Well, I think it is. It is part of what they're doing to Trump. Just using because now they've got a financial judgment against him. All the delays that they use, all the devices they use to delay, simply accrue higher costs and charges for Trump to pay, but also deliver the trigger for the district attorney, that corrupt Letitia James, to go after his assets, which is, again, what they want. You've been at Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.